Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at 4 tips for using typography in your designs and promoting better user experience. So without wasting any time, let's dive right into it. When it comes to typography, we need to make sure the text is readable. And there's a lot that goes into readability in typography, like contrast. If the contrast of your typography sears your retinas like you're staring at the sun, then I would argue it's useless. So even if your typography isn't searing retinas, my first tip for you guys is to check your contrast. So here I have 2 paragraphs, and you'll notice the first one isn't looking the best. This light gray text on the white background isn't standing out that great. Imagine this on multiple devices used by a lot of people. There's going to be some that aren't going to be able to see this as well, and some devices may not display it as well either. So you want to make sure you check your contrast. And one way to do that is obviously visually looking at this. You can see this one looks a lot better. Another way you can check your contrast is via plugin. Stark is a nice plugin that's available for Adobe XD, Figma, and Sketch. So if I simply select my text, hold Shift and grab the background, plugins, Stark, and check contrast, it's going to let me know if this passes this test or not. And now if I test the lighter shade, it's more than likely going to fail, which it does. So I wouldn't recommend using a text this light in a final design or finished product. So make sure you're checking your contrast throughout your design, making sure that all your typography is easily readable for your users. For tip number 2, make sure your text line length is not too long. Longer lines of text like this can be harder to read on a screen, so you want to make sure that you have this at a good size. To check your line length, simply count the characters in a given line. For example, this top line fills this text area, so I would count each character here, and it's probably well over 120. A good rule to follow is to never go over 90. The most optimal recommended range is around 70 to 80, no larger than that. So I'm actually going to scale this in a bit to somewhere like that. And I'm going to use a plugin to count this for me. Here in Adobe XD, we have a plugin called Count Text, and it's going to count the words and characters in a selected text layer. So if I run the plugin with this selected, it's going to count every character in this. So I'm simply going to delete my last 3 lines of text so that I only have my top line, and then I'll run Count Text. Here we have 79 character count, which is perfectly in that range. So now I'll undo that deletion and I have my paragraph. That's tip number 2. Make sure you're checking your max width of your paragraphs and lines of text, trying to keep a given line of text under 90 characters. But if you have to have a line of text that's over 90 characters, you can increase the line height to make it a little bit more readable. Before we move on to tip number 3, I have a bonus tip for you guys. I've purposely left this paragraph at this size to produce a widow. A widow is when you have a word by itself like this at the end of a paragraph, for example. So you want to make sure that you don't do that because it doesn't look the greatest. So you just make sure you have at least 2 words, if possible, at the end of a paragraph like that. For tip number 3, make sure you're using a good line height. Line height is the spacing between 2 adjacent baselines. For example, here I have these 2 lines of text, and I'm going to drag out these guides to the baseline of each. So the line height here would be from this baseline to this baseline. So here I have the same paragraph that is 16 point in size with various line heights ranging from 100 to 180. As the line height increases in this example, you can see how easy it is to read the text. Whereas if you use something like 100% line height, it looks a little bit more cluttered and it's harder to read. A good range to use for your text is 120 to 180%, with the most optimal being around 130 to 150. I prefer the higher side of that, so I use 150 and 140 for most of my paragraphs and body text in my designs. In Adobe XD and in most things like code, the line height is a default of 120% of the text size. So here we're using 16. So 100% would be a value of 16 for the line height. So to quickly change this on the fly, if I want 150%, I can just type in 16 times 1.5, and that will give me 150. If I want 120% line height, I can do 16 times 1.2. So make sure that your text has room to breathe and looks nice and readable by adjusting your line height. So my 4th and final tip for you guys today with typography is to make sure you're using readable font sizes. When it comes to body and paragraph text, a minimum of 16 to 17 point is recommended. This is arguably where most of your content is going to be and where your users are going to be reading through the information you're providing. You don't want them to have to zoom in or zoom out and squint all the time, so make sure you have that at a good readable size. The next thing here is when you use these large headings like this, make sure when you go to mobile, that you're scaling them down. So here I have the exact same size I had on my desktop version. You can see that this isn't looking the greatest. It's 1 word per line, so it's taking up a lot of vertical height. And so by looking at that, I'll know that I need to adjust this to something more suitable for a mobile device. So with that, that is all 4 of my UX tips for typography for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more design related content. I upload every Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure you have that notification bell on so you don't miss a video. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.